Yes, I think we'll just get started and then we'll see how it goes. Obviously, we need to go through a little bit first. I do know we have a drawing, but everything just crashed and we had to do a lot of things here lately. So I'll do the drawing of who won the CPI course here later, of the people that had shared the Figaf invitation, and thank you for everybody for doing that. I really appreciate it, and thanks for joining. So we have now just released a new patch, and that's adding some interesting features for the IRT for managing in the cloud and also in PI perspective. So let's get started. So my name is Daniel Greversen. I have been doing SAP integration for 15 years, and along the way it's always integration. XI, we did some business connector to understand what it was about, and then it's been PI, and a lot of this time it's been about a bit frustration about what the tools were able to do and all the manual things that you actually needed to do for it to work. And so I've been creating some tools, I guess, for maybe 10 years, and different quality, different applications, and now I've really got a professional team doing these applications, making it a lot easier to develop on the platform. So I'm a SAP mentor, as you probably know, and I've created some different blogs. I shared a blog last week about Git integration, and the purpose of this is to understand what's going on to make it a little easier, and I'll show you what you can actually achieve with it and why that is pretty cool. And then I'm a father and think that takes out quite a lot of time, and it's really fun. So you may have seen a Figaf demo some time ago, and we have been improving the functionality, and I guess that's kind of, when you're doing software, it's nice that you don't need to update all of these documents and stuff like that a lot, but we tend to add a lot of functionality, and then our marketing is that I need to figure out how to bundle all of these things together is a little behind, because it's a lot more fun to create newer functionality, make sure that some of these capabilities are there, and and we do have a lot. I was planning to create a course that's called Developing Faster CPI, where I'll go a lot more into details about these things. But since you signed up, I will send you some information about when you are getting these things. So you probably would ask, why do I need to develop faster? And I would probably ask you to look in your backlog. And I haven't heard about a single integration consultant developer that did not say, well, we do have these 300 extra projects that we need to do when we have this migration going on, and I need to understand how to make your cloud integration work. And it's just so many things that adds a lot of complexity to your daily life, and that makes it a lot more complicated on what's going on. So with that in mind, we know that there's some integration that needs to be done, and we need to develop that. And sometime when I reach out to people, I say, hey, do you have time for a meeting, sharing these things? And obviously you have time now to just understand and see what we can actually do for the next hour. I hope we can do it a little shorter and have some time for Q&A at the end. But what would happen if this would actually save 20% of your work on handling these different things? So just one housekeeping question. I hope you can hear me and you can see the slides. If you can, please just put them into the chat. And if there's any problems with the video or anything like that, just put them into the chat, and I'll try to keep up with that. Good. Perfect. So I guess no matter what kind of agile a process development component you have, you would have some kind of a process. It will look something like this, or waterfall, whatever, agile. They all have some kind of the same elements, and I just want to drive you through these things and see how the Figaf tool can actually help in this perspective. So we would start out with the specification. We'll do some development on these things. We will do some change management. We'll do transport, and we will support the solution once it's live. Good, and thrilled that you can see and hear me. That's that's a good start. So the specification, obviously, it will be difficult creating really a tool that would allow you to handle the specification part. Maybe something like the integration content advisor would help with that, though I'm not really sure where that fits in and how that will work out. But obviously you would need to understand, are there any pre-delivered integrations from the SAP CPI that you can use? Are there any custom products or solutions that you can actually buy that would solve these things a lot easier? And then are there content from others that you can other processes that you can actually use? And I think that would be where the Figaf tool may be able to help. If you know that you have created a Groovy script that will enable to search for these or do these things, then it may be a good way to actually understand what repository have what is going on. Good. That was the boring part, but I guess really essential for understanding and setting up your integration for it to be successful. The more interesting part, and the way we're seeing that it can actually be achieved and make your development faster, is that you will still do your iflow development in the web UI when you're creating models, BPMN models, you're making method mappings, or you're linking scripts to steps. But the places where we actually see that it could be a lot easier is for scripts, XSLT, Vistals, XSD, where I believe that a better IDE would actually speed up your development, because you can do something that the built-in editor does not really allow you to do. So the way where I actually see that this development could take place is the following. So here I have my CPI system. I have an iflow here, and here we can see the iflow here I want to use is this customer order it's a simple one that's looking up data in an OData connection, growing number of orders for some time, doing some iteration for each order, and I think there will be 5 in this. And then we are making a call to get some customer data, and we'll run an XSLT or a Groovy script after this. But so here we've done this, and we'll then use the Figaf IRT tool to actually synchronize all of these changes into a Git repository. And I will just let's just do some more things on how this sets up. So the reason why we want to use Git is I guess the de facto version control system that allow users to actually see what's going on, share code among developers. There's a lot of different workflows. You can have pipelines and stuff like that in it, and that really improves the development speed in a lot of areas. Obviously there's 2 parts of this. The one part is just about creating a repository that gives you access to all the code and somehow to handle these different things. Inksware had created a lot of good content about how you could test some of these things from your repository and how he was seeing these things. But we want to make it not really as like an optional part of these things, but really as an integrated part of your development process. You'll take out all the code, and I guess that was the part I just missed. So just get that. So the way we see this flow, and I think that it makes a lot of sense, is that you have your CPI content, a repository of all the different iflows you have, and an iflow obviously contains some metadata, and it contains some scripts, XSLTs, and all these different kind of things. You would then connect the Figaf IRT tool that will download all available information from CPI. It can then create a Git repository that it can synchronize to a server. And once you have done that, you can connect it with your local IDE to this Git repository. The way we wanted to make it easier for users to actually upload content again was to be using a push mechanism from the client. And I think that is something that makes the process easier, because the alternative approach would be that I, as a user, would commit it, the Git repository, you'll create some kind of a build script that will synchronize, and you don't really know when that will be done, how long time it will take. So the approach we have taken is a little differently. We have created some Gradle plugins, and the Gradle plugins actually allow you to have some commands that you actually can run directly from your IDE. So let me just show you a little on how this could actually work. And if you have some question, you can put them into the chat. So here I have my IntelliJ. I believe that that's so far the best tool. You can use Eclipse, but you need to add a lot of plugins to make sure that it works. You got all the right data on it. So when you are creating a IRT repository, you would then get all of these different templates will then say, hey, fill in this specific information in this. There's a Gradle that will contain all of this. And what you'll then do is you'll just copy this and put them into the specific ones. There's a property that has information about logging into your CPI and the IRT application. Then you need to add the IRT libraries, the CPI libraries that you just need to download, because we cannot really deploy them as a part of this. So that's the only thing you need to do manually. Other than that, you need to add Gradle, and you need to add Groovy to it. And once you have the Gradle, what you'll actually have is, so let's take this get customer order. We have then actually get customer order here. We can see what kind of data we have here. So we have one that's called upload iflow. We have one that's called that's download the iflow. There's one that's called deploy iflow. So let's try this. So we have a script here, but let's just create a new one. So we'll cover here. So we'll just create a new. Set header 2. We'll add it to the Git repository also. We'll just set some other headers. And we will save this you can just deploy to cloud platform integration and not the on-premise one on PO now, Marcus. All the libraries that you have is also included here. So if you have added specific custom libraries to the scripts or to this library, they will be placed in the lib folder here. And so one of the cool thing about this is that you can actually search here. So you can have, so you can just say find in path. And here you can search for everything that looks like jar. So we know that there is something in this Twitter library that contains some jar parts. So that, no, that's just metadata. But this enables us to actually search a lot of these things. If we just want to find another script where we, for instance, are setting find in path. Message, what's called factory. So if we're looking for places where we're using the factory bean, we can just search for it, and we can see examples on this, and this makes it really easy to copy paste from these things. So now we have added this, and we want to upload this, and we can just click upload, and it will then upload this. We can also deploy it, and let's just try that. So deploy integration flow, and obviously now we haven't really done anything with that script yet, but we can now see it is status deploying and successful, and that would be the normal toast that you're getting, and then you can actually set these extra things up. So that was the first part of that demo. So now we have made this, added the script, and let's see if we can actually make this. We will then, I'll just put it up here in the front. So we will set up a script here, Groovy script. Set first headers. And now I assume that it is here. So we can see we got set headers here. So it has been uploaded. And we will then say save as version and deploy. Oh, no, configure. Deploy. So that's fine. We are now deploying it. And then, yeah, I think it's also a good practice just to deploy this this change we just made, so we know where it's coming from. So we will commit it and push. So this will commit it to the repository and enable everybody to have access to this. Push. So yeah, pretty simple way to handle this. Obviously you need to learn Git, and I think that's one of the things I also need to be better at. So we have now done the process. Now we want to done our development, and then testing is obviously a part of this. And with the Figaf IRT tool, we testing is important to your development process, because CPI iflows become pretty complex, and if you don't have a good way of ensuring you have tested these things, no one really know what is actually happening in this case. So that means you're just trying to run things, it doesn't really work. It's creating a lot of problems, and you want to fix that in a good way. So we have created a way that allows you actually to, and the CPI test data is a lot more complicated, because you got this complicated structure of messages. You can send and receive messages, and some can be important and none can, or only the last can be important, and that can be a little difficult actually to understand what should be correct or not. So we have some different options for running tests on these different things, and this enables us to test differently. So the first one is we can use the current message to test with, and this is the case if it's SOAP HTTP or process direct. If it's process direct, we'll add another flow that can then trigger that process direct. If it's something that cannot be triggered via HTTP, it will actually create a mock service of it, which will replace the adapter with an HTTP adapter. And if you have something where you actually have mock service or want to mock all the response and replies for these things, we also have an option that allow you to do that with your agents. And then at the end, that's the new thing we wanted to create, make it possible to actually do unit test. So let's try that. So here I have the Figaf IRT tool, and what I'll do is I will just synchronize this. Oh, and we don't want it for PI. We are on the CPI demo now, so we want to synchronize. Synchronize will download all of these information about the iflow, so we know what's actually happening, and it will also add information to the Git repository about what's actually going on. So let's see how it goes. So normally with our system takes like 40 seconds. And we can see we got some new version, we got some new scripts going on. So we did a release here, we created a version as I recall it. So we should be able to see that this one has been finished. So if we go to this change tracking tool, and the change tracking tool here would actually allow us to understand all the changes that have happened to a specific iflow, and we can see that this one was released. We got 5 versions of it, and if we go in, we can see some data about what was actually being used here. What are the scripts? What are the components behind this? We have added a component that allows you to share scripts. So that actually now enables you to take one of these scripts, add a shared resource, take a script, save a shared resource. So when then this will be called so then everybody can actually, all other flows can use this, and there's a synchronization in place that actually enables us to handle this this processing. So you can optimize the scripts and make them global, accessible, and once you have made a change, you can update it on all of the different iflows that you have. So the other thing we wanted to do was we wanted to record this. So we will say get customer. So we have this get customer data, and we can record messages on this. So we'll just create it as this new one. Then 08, and we'll just need one message from it. So right now we are trying to create a test case on this, and we can see it has now saved or started this. This means that it'll also switch the iflow into trace mode. So if we check this iflow out, we can see it's just been put into trace mode by the IRT application. If we deploy it, we will then see that it will be processing a message. pretty soon. And once it has processed a message, we can use this to download all of the messages that it actually have for this. So it is in progress. I think there's 30 messages that it needs to download. So right now, I guess it's just figuring out what are all the messages that we have here. And we can see we have created the 35 messages. Yeah, that's because we added a new script. So that means we have actually created a new test case, or a new test case. So that was pretty easy to create a new test case for this specific instance. We can see up here we have the option, if we switch it into trace mode, we have the run with mock service. So whenever we run this, it will run with mock data. And let's just show you what that was. Before I was just getting some so we can select which system to run it on. I'll just do here. What it will do now is it will create a new CPI iflow, and this will then be deployed. So we can see it's creating this one. It is being started, and this is a fully mocked service. And what this enables us to do is it will enables us to run data on it, and yeah, so we can send messages to this instead of the original one that was just as a start timer. In the new one, we have the option. So if we select here, it'll just put it down to this one. Here we got the package. So get. So this is with mock services. Here we can see it has replaced this with on-premise our PI system. Not sure if it was working. So let's see. So now it's worked. Yeah. So we did have some Cloud Connect issues here. But if it would have worked, we would be able to actually see what was going on. So we will just need to switch this off. And if we test it now, it will test without, mocking services. So this makes some of the testing a lot easier because you have a lot of data in it. The other thing I wanted to share with you was actually, so we have some test cases here we can run, but what about actually taking some of these payloads and actually use them to test the data that we have? So we have created this button here, and this button will allow us to add the Git to a repository. So it will take these script, and I guess we'll show you what it actually has done. We can go back to our Git repository. We will pull. And what it has actually created, if everything works out, is that, so we can see here, these are the scripts that have been added by the projects. We have added the test cases here for this quick setup, header 2. And with this, we actually can see what are the input, what are the body that's being sent, and what are the output that was processed after the script. And here we can see that it's setting these different properties that we were specifying in our document. So let me just show you what will be changed if you, for instance, just change one of these values. What otherwise we have created is we have created this test script, and this would actually allow you to, here you can run a specific test case. So this will send in this individual message, process it, and then you'll actually get output directly from your IDE. So you don't even need to leave it, and you can see what are the errors that you're getting in it. You have the option to debug and all the different things that the IDE is giving you. I hope this was a different way of showing what you actually can do, and it was interesting. As a way of of improving the speed, because an IDE is a lot better to work in than the standard way of working. And obviously this is something you also need to figure out how this actually works in my workflow. So we saw how to create these things, how to test with mock service, unit test, and if there was any errors, you would actually be able to see what's going on. So let me just see if that's the test results we have here. If that was working or not. So we normally can go in here, view results, see if it was getting any data, but there was some problems setting this up, so not really sure what was going on in this case. But I hope you see some of the benefits of running these tests. We have some other tests that we could run, but basically you'll just see a true or false, and then maybe we'll actually have some test suite here that has some errors in. So here you have one that was an error. You can see if that was a PI. So that was a PI case. So it's actually the same that you would actually do for PI and CPI, though something would change. I guess I need to speed up if I want to give you time to Q&A. So that was unit test. You saw how easy it was to create. And in our manual, there's also a way if you want to have, so obviously what we tested here was just with input output, but you also have the option to create custom assertion where you're using this as the input data, and then you can just set up that the value should end in 0 or end in test number 3 or what you have. So really speed up some of the development process, setting up all of these assertions, so you as a developer do not need to set up all of these different things, and then you can just run all the tests once you have done any development. Good. Change management is, I guess, maybe the forgotten art about SAP integration. I think that's where you would spend a lot of time trying to document what you've actually done, and we've tried to make that process a lot smarter. So the whole point about creating change management is to know what you actually have done, who has made which changes, what were actually the business case for this, or who has actually asked for this, and what are the use cases where this makes sense. And then you need to link it to some kind of a business case or business requirement. And I guess then, so the first way we have documented this was in our IRT. So we did get this ticket. So this would be service request 994 at. So this is a service request. This is in progress, and then what we can actually do is we can add the iflow that we have made a change to. It also has API management. So let me just. So we can say this was actually the things that we added to this. Wasn't there? Did we make changes to it? Let me just release this, save it as a new version, just to be sure. We have a version on it. That was the demo. Yeah, so we hadn't released it, which is probably a bad idea, since before you transport it, it needs to have a version. I think our system will allow you to do that, but it's not a good idea. So it's 105. We need to, actually we can update here and see if it will update to latest version. No, so we just need to synchronize again. And you can schedule this so it will synchronize every 10 minutes and getting all the data that you need for this to work. so now it seems like we have got the new version. So we'll go back into a ticket. We will select the update to latest version, and we can see we now got not 105 here. We can also see the other versions we have. What we can then do is we can see what are the test cases we have for this. So we can see some of these test cases. They will probably not work in our case because of our missing Cloud Connector and stuff like that. So we can actually run them here, see what the results are. We can also create a transport. And the cool thing about this is we would select an individual iflow in a packet of multiple iflows. We'll select one, save it, and it will just add this into a process, so we actually have information about what's going on in this. The other thing we have that actually makes this process even smarter is we have in our CPI, so we have our flow that's called Git customer orders. Here we have some configuration that we have defined, and this is the values that is being used in our PI system, and we want to change this in our QA system. So this could be our passwords, they could be some of these other things that we have. So we need to see it should be enabled, and then it will actually use this specific information across our landscape, so we can specify what are the host names in our QA and production environment, so we don't need to go in after we have imported anything and configure these things. So we'll go back to our transport. We can then say we want to import this, and because we only have one PI system at the moment, we are using this concept about virtual landscapes, and the benefit of this is it actually now allow you to have the same iflows into run it multiple times in just one application. And if we'll just want to see what this looks like, we can then see we have one here that's called QA demo. Let's see if it was this one. And here we can see we got this customer case. I don't know if we had any process direct adapters, so I guess there's not anything here that needs to be changed, but we can see that the parameters that we changed in our original configuration was actually applied here. So this makes the process about deploying a lot easier and having virtual environment, so you can actually save your environment. That was configuration. We believe that you need this ticket concept, and obviously it will never replace Solman, Jira, or whatever you're creating tickets in or getting tickets in, but it will be a place that actually enables you to track all of these different things. And once you have done all the development on a specific ticket, you can just go to the report, you can generate a new report, and you can download this, and the report will then give you information about what was the attached object, what were the objects that were changed. So in QA we imported these different things. It was this integration object. We have these test cases. Our test run was like this. And we can see what was actually imported when transports was imported. So that would be what you'll then add as a part to this ticket, so people would know this was actually what was changed in this. The other thing we have is, so if we select the iflow here, we can create scenario documentation. And the cool thing about this is we've tried to go through how you would actually create scenarios, what's the best way to do that, document it. Here's a little about what are the certain scenarios that we are having, what are the adapters we have, what are the test cases, what's the flow description. So here we have something about process. We can see what's actually being created. We can see configuration across the landscape, and we can see all the resources that have actually been added to this iflow. And this could also be attached to the ticket to just document what was going on in this case. Transport, virtual environment. So you can just use a two-tier landscape and just use this and redirect all process-directed data will then be postfixed with QA environment. And probably this could also be enabled to so have developers have their own environments. We saw the generated documentation you can create. Support is also a big part about any SAP projects that you need to be a part of. And we have, so wanting to create a way that actually enables you to speed up finding of what's actually going on, what you can actually do with some of these things. And what we have created is in our application, so it's the same place, all these different things is just working in one area. And what we have here is we can go in, we can configure different types of consumers, that it should search for messages that failed, it should search where the receiver equals log. So the message does not really need to fail, but it can be any of these different areas. We also have the option to specify alerts. If CPU usage is above 80%, we want to trigger an alert. Or if we're processing latency of above 1000 milliseconds for our demo flow. Once you have defined that, you can go in and check the alert. So we're downloading every 5 minutes or something like that, all the different messages that fulfill these criteria. And here we can go in, see the data about this message. You can see what are the payload that we're getting. Are there any attachments to this? And if there was any actions or rules that we took that actually enable us to handle this thing. We can see we got some, so the expression is just that we're using an XPath expression to query into this data and finding out what was actually, if the iflow that fails is with this type, we know that it is fix this problem. We can send it to Jira or whatever we want, or to a specific email address. And we can specify if we want to send attachments and stuff like that. How they should be sent. Good. So that was, and then obviously over time you would build up a repository of all of these different rules, and that would then enable support to handle these things easier, because they can just, all alerts would then be popped into one of these attributes, and you can see what's going on there. The next part we have created is a message monitor, and our message monitor is a little different from what you have at SAP, where you can create a new message monitor. So you can select what are the status, you can select what are the artifacts, so you can choose one or more artifacts that you want are get customer data, so we can actually use all of these different things and see how this was processing. We could add finance things or anything like that, and then we can actually give access to a specific user for these things, so that user would only be able to see these elements. We can then view this, and I think this makes it a lot easier to see what's actually being processed. What are the correlation ID, and this is just querying directly into the CPI database, and that's maybe the reason it's taking a little longer. So we can see on our QA environment, processing was successful. We are seeing the data. We can see what are the alerts we got here on this specific case. And we can go trace and stuff like that. So search for application ID and stuff like that. Yes. So with a message monitor, CPI status, I just want to show a little about what you can see with this. So here it will show all the time how the latency has been changed, and sometimes you can see some patterns into it. that shows you something strange is going on. And you can see sometimes that the tenants has been changed, and why is this memory consumption, CPU usage going up like that? So this gives you some information about what's actually being processed here. So just for PI, I will not be able to show this, but we have a lot of the same concepts. So if you're doing this for PI, it will be a lot the same. Here for PI, we can use the CTS or file transport that you're making and linking them with a ticket, because then you're getting a lot more information about what's actually being changed. It's a lot easier to set up testing. And you also have the ability to anonymize data. You can upload test cases manually. There's support from component-based message alerting instead of downloading messages, so it'll just use that one to process messages. If any questions, I promise there should be time for Q&A. You can just put them into the chat. I'll go through those. So getting started. And the reason why I wanted this is obviously you want to save some of the developer time. It should be faster develop. It should be a lot simpler. And I think with the Git integration, having everything in an IDE makes it a lot easier. You can test the things with this unit testing, and thereby actually have the ability to change the scripts faster. There's less support because this process can be automated. And then there will be a simpler change management process in place that you as a developer don't need to spend 2-3 hours documenting what you have seen. As you can see, it's actually being created in a few minutes. You probably want to specify a little more in the documentation part of this, writing what you have done and why you have done it. The business tester can also save some time because we got this automated regression testing inside of this. And then you have this virtual environment that actually allow you to save a QA system. So that could also save 500 or 600 euros for that. We have a cloud service where you can run this. It's fairly cheap priced, so we're just trying to put close to the SAP pricing, and I think with this developer productivity, it's makes a lot of reasons for doing these different things. So it's 450 euro a month to run the lowest tier package for the DevOps. I think this is the one that makes most sense in most companies. And there's a free trial you can try it out on. We have a roadmap. We will create some test cases. There are some more things we need to do in making the test a little easier. I think we'll also add CPI lint, the project Morten is adding. So before you can actually transport and want to get some QA involved, you can actually get some kind of a list that says, here is, this is what I've done, this is how it works, and are you satisfied or not? So you'd get some warnings that says, hey, you're using standard scripts, we don't want that, or we're using these different things. And then we got some automated migration going on in the PI space, so we can actually speed up the migration. So if you're doing a PI TPO migration 731 to 7.5, we can automate a lot of these processes on. But you'll get some more information about that once we are a little further down the line. So you can go try it out, figaf.com/IRT cloud. Then you can try these things and see how they actually work, and use this in your own landscape. Try to connect it and experience these things. So that was all I wanted to share. I guess I'm 5 minutes late, but there was a lot of things. I hope this was helpful. You saw some interesting use cases in this, and that it could actually help in your development process. So any questions, feel free to put them into the chat. I really would like to answer them. Or if there's some area that you see, this would be a good way to connect with these things, then do let me know. We are interested in figuring out how we can improve this in a lot different ways. So yes, put your questions into the chat. And otherwise, if you don't have any questions, thanks for being here, spending almost an hour with me and learning some of these things. And I do hope it has been interesting.